Welcome to Over Soju. I'm Cho alongside Kyung. A little about the podcast and what we plan on delivering in the coming episodes. We're expatriates living in Korea with experiences in English teaching, media, and other trades. And we're always curious as to how the country works and how we could personalize things for a more comfortable and convenient living standard as a foreign community. You might also hunger to search for new spots for the latest food and drinks, solutions to daily living such as housing and banking, and discovering hot trends in culture and entertainment. And to execute an excellent podcast session, Kyung and I will discuss hot topics, and also sometimes with friends, acquaintances, and professionals with first-hand knowledge and expertise on those topics addressed. We want each and every episode to be informative, engaging, but above all, a fun listening experience. Before we get down to brass tacks, like and subscribe to our podcast channel. Shall we?
So, Jason, you recently traveled back to the States, right?
Yep, went to go back home, see some family. So I'm from the state of Virginia, so I had to travel from, let me think, Incheon to Texas, and then Texas to Dulles in Washington, D.C., and then I took a train from Dulles all the way down to Central Virginia.
Why so many layovers?
Oh, so I bought the ticket a little bit late, and I was really I had a lot of flexibility, and to be honest, I don't really mind layovers that much, so I just figured get the cheapest ticket, and the tickets were super cheap. For a round-trip ticket, it only cost me $1,000.
Oh, okay. So if you were to book a direct flight or a near direct flight without so many layovers,
it would probably be a little bit expensive, a little bit more expensive. And also, I booked the ticket. It was somewhat of a last minute trip. I had to take care of some family stuff. So yeah, I also was booking it very close to the takeoff time.
We're in a pandemic right now.
We are.
Right.
Yeah.
And what kind of shit feelings did that give you on traveling?
I was very apprehensive about traveling, I will admit, because it's right now like you said, we're in a pandemic. It's a very daunting feeling having to travel on basically a solid steel coffin in the sky.
Right,
if you want to be very morbid about it. But yeah, it's a scary time right now, and especially for traveling. This was a trip that I had to do. I couldn't really get around it. And so I took all of the necessary precautions, both before, during, and after the trip.
Okay, so let's talk about those precautions then when you're preparing to get out of Incheon.
Yeah.
So did you have to contact the government authorities, prepare for quarantine there, or what's the rundown on that?
Yeah, so when I was first planning my trip, I had looked up all of the relevant information concerning both my status in Korea and then also my respective country. And I should say that for all of our listeners, that no matter what you hear from a friend or just, from so-and-so, contact a direct source, meaning contact immigration, contact your local consulate or embassy in your respective country, get that information from them. So for me, I'm a U.S. citizen. Luckily, right now, Korea is being pretty lax towards U.S. citizen, and also because of my visa as well, I have a Kyopo visa, and so that made things a lot easier. I know that for people who do not have certain types of visas, such as the Kyopo visa, they have to go through a lot more steps.
Sure.
I think one of the big things that I was really worried about was that am I going to have to get a COVID test result from a doctor in my respective country? Because I know a lot of other people have to do that. Luckily for my visa, I don't have to do that. But like I mentioned before, disclaimer, please check with the immigration authorities and also maybe your local embassy and consulate to get the most relevant, up-to-date information.
So immigration authorities from both sides, Korea and the States, or just on the American side?
Oh, well, that's also a good point as well. So for me, I didn't really check into the American authorities because so far all I've heard is that in terms of comparing the quarantine conditions and social distancing conditions, Korea is being way more aggressive than the U.S. Now, that also, I still did check with my local state. I made sure that there was no quarantine. I know that for certain states, such as Hawaii, there used to be a 2-week quarantine when you landed. But, I did check for the information, but I wasn't too worried about going back to the States. My main concern was coming back from the U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
And And you said that if you have like a Gyopo or F4 visa or any F visa, that the processing is a little easier, right?
Yes.
But if you are on an E or other, then it's a little more difficult.
So from what I've heard and from what I've read before is that for people who do not have select visa, so I believe I know F4 visa gives you an exemption from having to show a COVID test result.
Right.
I do know that certain other visas as well, but it's only a handful. I think it's only maybe 4 or 5. All the other visas, most likely you're going to have a COVID test in the country that you go to,
right.
and I think it's like a 3-day time period from when you get the test result to when you have to leave, and you have to get the test results within that time period.
I see. Okay, sure. So let's talk about your trip to the airport.
And,
so processing at the airport.
Yeah. So thinking about some of the more, I guess, practical measures I took. So I was pretty careful when it came to like the face shield and face covering. So I had a face covering and one of those clear plastic face shields as well. I was wearing both of those. And
is that a requirement though?
It's not a requirement, but I saw another friend doing that as well. He, one of my other friends, he was coming from New York to Seoul, and he took a picture of that, and I was just thinking, yeah, probably not the worst idea. Right. So I was probably being overly cautious, but like another thing that was weighing on my mind was I would have to have a layover in Texas. In Texas, haven't been handling COVID very well. So that was that. And that, in addition to just simply the idea of traveling, made me want to go just above and beyond. So I had plastic face shield, cloth face covering, tons of hand sanitizer.
Right.
For a little while, I was wearing gloves, but that was just becoming just such a hassle. Like trying to get things in my pockets and stuff. And so eventually, I just took it off, and I was just using hand sanitizer and washing my hands constantly.
You should have just bought a hazmat suit.
You'd be surprised. Like I thought I was going a little bit overboard, but during my trip to going to the U.S., I saw other people doing the same things, and some people were using latex gloves as well. So, I mean, I thought I was being a little bit ridiculous, but I guess everyone else, well, not everyone else, but a lot of other people had the same idea.
Yeah, because U.S. is it has one of the highest coronavirus cases, if not the most.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about like the vibes though. Like it must be really empty there.
It was very empty. So going to at the actual airport, I'd overheard the ticket counter saying to other passengers that right now, Incheon Airport, they're only doing one flight a day. Now, I think I do think they meant one flight a day, maybe per airline. I mean, that would be ridiculous if it was literally only one flight a day.
No, but that's understandable.
Yeah. So, and it was pretty empty as well.
Sure.
My flight just from Incheon to Texas, that was maybe only 50 to 70% full, and also half of the people that were on that flight were U.S. military. I think they had finished their like whatever their requirements in Korea, and they were going back home or something.
Going a little off topic, have you ever seen like a listing at the airport where they had like flights to nowhere? Like especially like
I've heard about that. Yeah, right. I think they're doing it. What, Australia or like,
and Taiwan.
For those of you who don't know what flights to nowhere, like it's this new thing that airlines are doing where they literally just take you up in the air.
Right.
You fly around in circles for a little bit, and you just come back to your original takeoff point.
Sure.
I do not believe that they were doing that. I would be very curious if they are, and I would be interested in trying it out. That'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
Same here. Talk us more about, boarding the flight, right?
Yeah, so boarding the flight, let me take a step back. Going through security, they had checked all of my paperwork, and also they had temperature scanners set up already. They had those kind of automatic face scanning temperature checks,
right.
And so I had to go through that as well. And then also boarding as well, they made you do a temperature check again at that point. And after that, it was pretty much just like everything else. Oh, I should say that because the plane was only like around half full, it was pretty flexible about where you could sit. And
business class.
I wish. But luckily, the flight attendants, they're like, oh yeah, like I mean, obviously there's no people here, so if you want to move after we get into the air, feel free to do that. Just ask us first. I want to say for going there, like I was on the left side row, and originally I had a window seat, but then no one else was there, so I just laid out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I just laid out and just took a nap.
Okay, and you lifted those seat barriers.
Yeah, yeah. It was fine because so many people were doing it, and it's like
armrest.
Yeah, the armrest.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else?
After you get into the air and like you're going through layovers, kind of that at that point it's kind of a regular flight, and so there wasn't any kind of extra security precautions. Every now and then when I was going through airports, I'd have to do a temperature check, and also making sure that I was doing social distancing. I will say that for the airports that I was in, so I was in Texas and also Dulles for going to the U.S. They were pretty empty. It was quite shocking to see airports as empty.
Not apocalyptic.
I mean, not apocalyptic. I think because I just went back in when was it? September 2020, and so by that time things were kind of picking up a little bit, but it was still, you could definitely tell the difference between a fully functional airport with I guess close to max capacity to what it is now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it must have been a hassle to keep that mask on.
It was. There were a lot of times where I'd forgotten, and then also for other people as well when I was talking with them. For example, like the flight staff. So there were a lot of times that I couldn't hear them because of the mask, and then I was just like, what? Like I couldn't really hear them. And then sometimes when I was talking with them, they couldn't hear me, and then I would just kind of unconsciously pull down my mask to talk to them, and immediately they would say, "You gotta keep your mask up."
Oh, I see.
And I was just like, "Oh yeah, okay." But
I'm pretty sure that's a habit recognized by a lot of people.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was just something that you just had to get used to. Was it an inconvenience? Yes. But do you have any alternative? No. And that's something that definitely everyone needs to understand. Yes, it's an inconvenience, but what's the alternative? Dying. Right. So I think I'll
wearing the other kind of mask.
Yeah.
At an ICU.
Yeah. So I'll wear the cloth mask for now. Sure. Yeah.
How could you say that you could stand all these layovers? I mean, one layover for me is like
I'm okay with layovers, to be honest. I mean, but that's for me traveling solo. If I'm with another person, then obviously I'm not going to be. Obviously, I'm going to be a little bit more
I see. Okay.
Understanding.
We'll keep that low key. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So getting home. Getting to your home airport, right? Yeah. In Virginia. So that's your stop. What run-in did you have with the airport authorities? So what procedures did you have to go through?
Getting out of the airport, not really, because it's up to like I guess all airports, not even just in the U.S. but all over the world, for that when they check in the passengers, they're going through proper procedures. But getting out, it wasn't too bad, and especially in the U.S.
What about contact tracing?
So the U.S., as far as I know, and as far as I experienced, there was no type of contract tracing except for like maybe a simple travel history when you fill out your immigration form.
Okay, so that might be one rough form of.
That's true. That could be one form of contract. I wasn't thinking about that much because I mean I'm already a U.S. citizen, so sure. I have a right to go back to the U.S. Mm-hmm. But I do believe that at least in some form. But I mean I don't think that was specifically for COVID. That was kind of just the typical like immigration travel history that you have to fill out all the time, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you feel any fears that you were gonna catch it?
I mean, yeah, all the time because maybe I'm a little bit of a what's that term where if someone has a fear of always getting sick.
Hypochondria.
Yeah, hypochondriac. Maybe I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac, but just that off chance that I go into, for example, the wrong bathroom stall at the wrong airport, and the wrong guy had just gotten out of that bathroom stall. So there was that fear, but I mean, you do what you can.
Right, and the hundreds of daily cases.
Exactly.
Not just, I mean, not in the country, but per state.
Well, like in the U.S., sometimes it's thousands.
Right, exactly. Well, how was Virginia faring at that time?
So Virginia, they were on the better side compared with a lot of states. But at the same time, they were still taking a lot of precautions. Luckily, I'm from Central Virginia, and so luckily that area, like they didn't really get hit hard. I have a couple of friends that work at the local hospitals, and they say, to be honest, that actually they're really bored because there haven't been like really any cases, and so they prepared so much for it. But I guess that's kind of a blessing in disguise.
Oh, even during even like the very first surge.
Yeah. So luckily Virginia, they got off pretty lucky, and especially since they're pretty much connected with Washington D.C., a major metropolitan city. So luckily Virginia was pretty good, and then also everyone in Virginia, they seemed to be okay with all of the social distancing and protective measures. Yeah. So pretty much everywhere I went, a face covering was required. They had hand sanitizer pretty much everywhere. So I do remember I had to go to the grocery store a bunch of different times. And then at the grocery store, everyone had face coverings. There was hand sanitizer. Everyone. Yeah. And then also the people were practicing social distancing as well. Right. I went to get some fast food a couple of times. Pretty much everyone was going drive-through. I think I was actually the only one that went physically inside. I mean, I went physically inside because I wanted to see the menu. I haven't been back to the U.S. in a while.
Well, but they got the menus in the driveway too.
Yeah, but I wanted time to look at the menu, and luckily I was the only one in there aside from the staff, so it was okay.
So did it feel normal aside from the case that people almost everyone was were wearing masks?
I guess for the most part, yeah. The only weird things was one, all of the protective measures like masks, and two, there just weren't as many people as you normally see before. Right. I went to the local mall. It was, I would say, barely at half capacity.
Right. Malls are taking a hit in America.
That's true, yeah. But also, I went to certain outdoor areas as well, and you could definitely tell that a lot of people are choosing not to go outdoors, to restaurants, bars, things like that.
Right.
That was probably the most. That was the most observant thing that was very similar with pretty much everywhere else, I guess you could say, in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And how about going out, catching up with friends? Did you kind of engage in that function?
I did. So I did meet up with a lot of friends, and if I was in their house, we were practicing good protective measures as well. And then if we met outdoors, we did the same thing. I met up with some of my friends' parents actually, and we had made an appointment through email to meet up, and then in email, which I thought this was very interesting, that she had wrote down reminder, please be wearing protective covering, and I wish I'd asked her, because obviously I was going to do that anyways, but I wish I'd asked her did you write that because other people haven't been doing that? So that's something I've been a little bit wondering, but. To go back to your original question, when I was meeting up with friends, we were taking all of the safety measures.
Wearing masks inside the home. Sanitizers.
We were using hand sanitizers, and we weren't inside. So I only went into one friend's house, and we all felt comfortable enough. And also, those friends' parents, they're both doctors as well. So I felt they were okay with me taking off my face mask. We were still practicing good social distancing.
Sure.
But I felt a little bit more comfortable doing that inside someone's house.
How about bars?
So I did go out to a bar one time, and they had outdoor seating, which is good, and they were also practicing social distancing and face coverings as well. Nice. So it was weird, but the bars, I do think they need to step it up a little bit, like how the bars are in Korea. Because when I went to a bar in Korea a couple weeks ago, they were doing contact tracing, they were doing temperature checks, and then also everyone was taking like super duper safety measures.
Right, exactly. And then once you pass all those like threshold, it kind of feels like a pre-pandemic kind of atmosphere. So right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So like coming back here in Korea though, let's talk about that. So reverse processing. What did you have to go through the U.S. government and Korean immigration?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, luckily because of my visa and also my home country, it's a little bit easier for me. So I did double check with a friend who has pretty much the exact same details as me. He also is on a Kyopo visa, and also from the U.S. And he had just came back from the U.S. maybe a week before I did. And so I asked him, "Hey man, I just want to make sure. Like I've read that we don't need to get a COVID test result from the U.S., but I want to make sure you didn't have to do that, right?" And he said, "Yeah, it was all good. He just went through the immigration. He didn't have to do anything." While he was still in the U.S. to prepare to go through immigration in Korea. So I got really lucky with that.
Okay, but sorry, I forgot to ask you this. But you had to quarantine for 2 weeks when you came back to the States, right?
So yeah, that's in Korea. So taking a step back, talking about the process of going back to Korea. So as I mentioned before about my flight experience and going through like security and everything, I mean that was basically all the same stuff going back from the U.S. to Korea. Right. Now the big thing was getting into Incheon and going through the immigration process. Okay. That was one of the most arduous, grueling experiences of my entire life.
You told us before that it was really stressful.
To give you some time, to give you some numbers, I landed at 3 p.m. I didn't get out of immigration until 7 p.m. I think a little bit past 7.
So usually it would take about like an hour, 30 minutes.
I mean, it would take usually an hour.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So when I first landed, from when I got out of the airplane, I had to go through 5 different checkpoints. The first one had always been there, but they kind of redesigned it for COVID. It was just simply like walking through these barriers, and then as you're walking through, there's immigration officials on the side looking at the screen of an infrared camera and making sure no one has high temperatures.
No one's flashing red or yellow.
Yeah. You don't have to talk to them. You just simply have to walk past the camera so that they can check your temperature. So that part was easy. Then we get into the actual immigration lines where you have to turn in all your forms. That was the grueling part. Now, it wasn't grueling in terms of like having to deal with immigrations and discuss with them and explain your travel history. What was really grueling, it was more of the administrative obstacles that they had to go through. So originally, because I have a Kyopo visa, I was non-COVID times, I'm able to go through the Korean immigration line.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. This time I wasn't. They're completely separating that. So if you are a foreigner, regardless of any type of visa, you gotta go through the foreigner line.
I see.
And because of that, there must have been maybe 1 million people, because I think as you're waiting, more and more people from other flights are coming in and just adding to the line.
I see.
And so as you're waiting in line, you have to install this app on your phone. It's run by the Korean government.
You have to download it on the spot.
So you have to download it on the spot. Now they give you instructions and they have posters giving all the details of how to do it and stuff. But because there were so many actually like fairly elderly people on my plane coming back from the U.S., there was a lot of technical difficulties, and then there's some people I guess all of a sudden they didn't bring phones as well, so that also caused a lot of difficulties. And you had tons of immigration officials and like people in hazmat suits trying to explain, how to download and install this app and how to use and how to work this app to a person who's like maybe 60 or 70 years old,
right.
and
can't navigate.
And obviously these people, and like for the most part, these people, they're not tech savvy, and so
exactly
that caused a lot of headache, both for the immigration officials and for other people, because that meant longer waiting times.
Sure.
So, starting from that, and then we get into the second checkpoint. And the second checkpoint, you give all your documents, and then they check to see where you came from. They also check your visa to make sure all that's good. And then you have to get back into another line. And that other line leads to the third checkpoint. The third checkpoint is where you have to show all your documents again, but also if you are doing quarantine in your house, then you need to call up someone as your kind of designated contact.
Like a parole officer.
Yeah, exactly, kind of. I mean, so luckily I was just able to call up one of my friends. I said, hey, in 30 minutes you're going to get a call. Can you just tell this person that you know me and that you're my quote-unquote designated contact during my 2-week quarantine? And so when I was talking with the immigration official at the second checkpoint, he took my phone. And he was talking to my designated contact. And also if you're doing that, your designated contact, they also need to. That designated contact needs to know your address as well, which I didn't know. My friend originally didn't know that as well.
Okay, so
luckily I was good with that. Now, at this point, I should mention, for the people who are doing the 2-week quarantine in a motel or something, I have very little information about that, other than from what I've heard from other people, where they put you on a bus with all the other people, go to kind of the outskirts of Seoul.
Yeah, certain locations. I saw that.
Yeah, and they put you in a motel, and I've heard that is a pretty rough experience.
Okay, who'd you hear that from?
Oh, so one of my good friends, his girlfriend went through the experience. I talked with her a couple of times while she was in quarantine.
Yeah.
It's not like a regular hotel where you have to stay, like where you get room service and maids coming in and cleaning.
Of course.
No, it's like literally the government took a hotel building, and then they took out all of the amenities and just left, I don't know, maybe a mattress there. And some sheets. And also in terms of food and everything, you can't have anything delivered there. I've heard that for water, you get 2 big balls of water in the morning, and if you run out, well, I hope you like drinking tap water.
I see. How about you get food trays then, right?
Yeah, but I heard the food, it's a mixed bag. It's a very mixed bag. Like sometimes it can be pretty good, and sometimes you get maybe fresh fruit and something. Right. Sometimes it's literally just maybe ramyun from the convenience store.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So for people who are doing that, unfortunately, I do not have experience or very good knowledge about that, and I'm sorry you have to go through that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I visited the airport during the pandemic, when people were coming out, usually you could just get out, but they had tables for testing, and also they had signs with the cities labeled on it.
Yeah, so I'll get to that in just a little bit, but let me finish. So just to recap, we had the first checkpoint, which is just the infrared camera. Second checkpoint, where they're checking your documents. Third checkpoint is, third checkpoint is where they're going to be calling your designated contact.
Right.
Fourth checkpoint is the real immigration barrier gates, where you have each immigration official in the little booth. So that was all kind of normal. They check your documents again. And then there was a fifth checkpoint, which I was a little bit confused about, because basically what they had asked me to do after the fourth checkpoint, they told me, oh yeah, now go all the way down to the other side where you can finally go through the immigration barriers. But it's in the same, it's on the same side of the room. So I'm just wondering, I didn't know exactly why they had an extra checkpoint when it seemed like they were just checking all the same documents from the fourth checkpoint. But I mean, I had to do it, and then afterwards I finally got through.
Well, were there any authorities there or officials who could help travelers navigate through English?
Oh yeah, there were tons. Yeah,
okay,
tons of people. And
did you speak English to them too?
For the most part, yeah, I just spoke English with them, cool. And also they didn't really need to talk with me that much. I mean, I had all my documents ready and everything. That's something that if you're planning on doing it, make sure you have all your documents ready, filled out, organized. Able to show them in just a neat manner. That's going to speed up the process a lot, and also it's good. They're going to really appreciate that.
How long do you reckon it would take for someone without a smartphone in hand?
Well, they wouldn't be able to. So that app that I was mentioning.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention about that app. So it was the second or third checkpoint. That's where they physically had to see you open that app, and it was the third checkpoint. Yeah. So the third checkpoint, that's where you have to open up your app, and you should have already filled out all the basic information in the app while you were standing in line.
Sure.
But when you go there and you open up the app, they do something kind of behind the scenes that kind of approves your app download and registration on their side. And so that gets you to the next part of the app. And so they say okay, so from now on, when you're in quarantine, you're going to have to use this app to check in, to check in with all immigration authorities.
What's the app called?
I used to have it. So I deleted it. It's something very generic. It's like My Quarantine app or something. Yeah, I'll get into that in just a little bit. But let me finish talking about the airport. Yeah. So I finally got out of immigration and finally got into the baggage area.
Yeah.
And obviously, and this is 4 hours later. So obviously they had taken all the bags from the luggage carousel and they just put it all to the side. So I found my bag immediately, and then finally I was able to go out of the baggage area into the main arrivals terminal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
Then
after you got out.
Yeah, I wasn't out of the woods yet. Exactly. So at that point, as soon as I had walked out of the baggage area, I thought I was going to be in the main arrivals terminal. I could just go to the subway easily. Exactly. Nope. As soon as you walk out, there's 2 security guards, and there's a barrier forcing you to walk along the wall all the way to the east end of the terminal. Mm. And so what I didn't know was that they're forcing everyone to go to one specific, I guess you could say, travel hub, and that's where you can either reserve a taxi or reserve a bus to go to wherever you need to go.
Oh, okay.
And then along the way, as you're walking towards there, there's security guards at maybe every 20 meters or so, making sure that you don't just go under the barriers and just walk into the main terminal area.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
All right, so did you take a taxi or a bus?
I took a taxi. So I live fairly close to the airport, and it wasn't too expensive. I want to say it was somewhere between $15-$20 for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it wasn't too bad.
Because usually the average price is $50 or $40.
Yeah, definitely. But I got pretty lucky with that. Also, I don't think they have that much business right now going on at the taxis coming from the airport. So I think that also might have been why it was so cheap.
Sure.
So I took that. And they only have designated taxi people who are willing to take people from the airport to their house. But I did that, and I got home, and then by that time I was exhausted. It was well past 8 or 9 or something. I went straight to bed.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. You passed out.
Mm-hmm. And that was the start of my quarantine.
Yeah, exactly. How did it work? There's an official that keeps track of what you do?
Yeah, so for everything that you're going to be doing during your quarantine, that it's going to be all directed from your local district office in Korea.
Right.
And so for me, that was my point of contact. They had sent me a message as well. They sent me a couple messages, actually, kind of explaining to me how this quarantine was going to work. So on the first day, I had to go to the district office to get a COVID test.
Right.
And have you ever gotten a COVID test before?
No, I haven't.
It's not a pleasant experience.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. The main thing is the cotton swab in the nose and in the back of the mouth.
That terrifies me.
That part sucks, especially the nose one. The nose one is really unpleasant.
Right.
I was squeezing my knees as they put that cotton swab into my nose.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like eternity for you, but...
Yeah, exactly.
See. Sure.
Yeah, but, I mean, once all that was done, I went straight back home, and I gotten those test results the next day, which was really nice.
Sure.
Negative. Whew,
Right.
luckily.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah.
Or, thank God.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Sure.
So now we get into the main part of quarantine. So for quarantine, for me, it wasn't too bad. Sure, it sucks being in your house completely for 24 hours for 2 weeks, but what are you going to do? And luckily, I had a lot of things around the house that I had wanted to get accomplished, like a lot of housekeeping stuff that I wanted to do. I mean, I still had, my TV, streaming, I had my laptop, so I was doing as much work as I could remotely.
Sure.
And then every so often, I would have to, contact the local district office to ask a couple of questions, but it wasn't too bad. Now, when you start to get into the main part of your quarantine, the main thing that you have to do for the Korean government is to log on to that quarantine app 2 times a day. What you're doing is they have a section to input all of your health details. So I would have to take my temperature 2 times a day, once in the morning and in the evening. I get the temperature, write it into the app, and then also they have some other questions saying, do you have any symptoms of coughing, or do you feel nauseous? Things like just kind of basic health questions.
Right.
And every single time you just click no, and then you just click submit, and that's it. You do that 2 times a day. It's pretty easy.
Is it in English or in Korean?
English, luckily.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was one part of the app. The other part of the app is it's making sure that you're staying in your house. Mm-hmm. And how it does that is that it's using your phone's GPS. And so if your phone is just dormant and just staying in one place for too long of a time, the app will send you an alert, and it's a really loud alert. And so it just says like, hey, the phone's been kind of just stuck in one place for a long time.
Okay.
You're still in your house, and you basically just open up the app, and that's it.
Sure.
You don't and then what I've heard, I didn't experience this, but my friend, he told me when he went through quarantine maybe a month ago or something,
right.
At certain times, because his phone was just in one place for too long, he would get a notification, but also a person from the district office would call him and say, hey, what's going on with your phone? You're still in your house.
Sure.
And to take it one step further, I've heard that sometimes they will physically come to your house to make sure that you are still abiding by quarantine rules.
Okay, with or without police?
That I do not know.
Okay.
I hope it's without police, because if it was police, that's a little bit intimidating.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
Sure, okay.
Yeah. And obviously you don't want to break quarantine rules. The fines are pretty...
Well, deportation.
So foreigners, I believe, they can risk. No, we've already heard stories about foreigners getting deported because they're breaking quarantine rules.
Right.
For Koreans as well, like the fines are pretty steep. I don't remember exactly, but I do remember seeing them being like, "Ooh, that's rough."
Well, you better pay someone else's health bills for whoever's infected with corona.
Yeah. So I mean, if you break quarantine rules like purposefully, that's your own fault. Now, going on to some of the more administrative things, like, for example, getting food. Luckily, Korea has an awesome delivery service.
Okay, you could access that?
Yeah, so because I was at my house, not in the motel, I had access to all the delivery services. So I would order all my groceries overnight. They'd come next morning. Also, when I wanted to get food delivery as well, they were taking social distancing measures very carefully, and so they would just leave the food at my door, then ring my doorbell, and then just go.
I see.
Yeah.
Sure.
So that was a lifesaver. I can't imagine being able to do this quarantine if I didn't have access to those services.
Okay, but these delivery apps don't know if you're in quarantine.
Yeah, the delivery apps, they don't know.
So they just practice the best social distancing measure.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the only other thing that I can think of that requires you to go outside of your house is basically trash. Mm. Trash. That kind of worried me a little bit. Luckily, my friend who's my neighbor, he was a huge lifesaver. Shout out to him, by the way. He really helped me out because he had gone through quarantine himself a couple months back. And he said, hey, man, like, if you need any help taking out trash, just let me know. Just, disinfect the bag and leave it outside your door. I'll come and take it. And that was awesome.
Sure.
I'm really thankful for him. But there were certain times where I was thinking, oh, it's like I don't want to keep bothering him with trash. So at one point, I did tie up all my trash and leave it in my utility closet. And my utility closet has a window, and luckily it was getting pretty cold at that time.
Right.
And so there wasn't any smell. Now, if you have to do this during the summer, I can imagine that's going to be pretty rough. I mean, that's going to be definitely going to be a
roach infestation.
It's gonna smell. Right, yeah, it's definitely gonna smell.
Sure, but didn't you see a dumpster from your window?
just throw it out.
Yeah, chuck it. Hail Mary that.
Pretty sure you get arrested.
Right.
Yeah.
Or fined. Yeah. I see.
Yeah. And so that was my quarantine experience basically. Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned, I had lots of downtime. Caught up on my sleep a lot, did tons of cooking. That was really nice.
Sure.
And read a lot. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. But I will say that for a person who is a homebody, still 2 weeks, that's a bit much.
Right. That's your horror story.
Yeah. And so luckily when I was able to get out, I remember exactly the time. I was able to, the person at the district office told me, hey, you'll be able to leave at noon on this day. And then as soon as I got out, it was like being able to breathe fresh air outside while being outside and feeling the sun on your face.
Or opening your window.
Exactly.
See. Okay, so how did it feel?
Oh, it was great. It was euphoric. I mean, being able to finally go outside. I just wish it hadn't gotten so cold by the time I went outside.
I see. Well, what's the first thing that you did?
Went to the grocery store.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Spend a couple of hours there. Bought some.
How do you spend a couple of hours in the grocery store?
You could easily spend a couple of hours in the grocery store.
Well, maybe in Emar Traders, but
no, you can easily spend a couple of hours.
Okay,
but
all right.
Yeah, I went there. Did a little window shopping as well. Just walked around a little bit.
Right.
Got a beer as well.
Nice.
Yeah, that's another thing that sucks about quarantine is that. For these delivery apps, for the most part, you can't really just buy alcohol just through like their regular kind of convenience store delivery service.
Or Yogio, right?
Yeah. So the only way that I know of that you can buy alcohol is when you're also ordering food from a specific restaurant. And
right.
And that restaurant needs to offer alcohol on their menu, the delivery menu.
Well, for example, if you want like chicken.
Yeah, exactly. Chicken.
Beer, right? Yeah. In a bottle.
Yeah, that reminds me. Surprisingly, did not order chicken while I was in quarantine. I bet a lot of Korean people have been
travel to Virginia, come back, and then do it again. Yeah.
But luckily, my friend, also big shout out to him. He also gave me a couple beers as well. He came and gave me some beers. Like, hey, I thought you might want this, and then that was also a life.
Did you guys drink together?
No, we didn't. Just simply because, he was in quarantine. He had just gone through quarantine. Okay. He didn't want to, take any. He wanted to take all the necessary precautions.
All right.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah. But then afterwards, I think the second day after quarantine, we went to a bar together.
Nice. Do you see yourself traveling overseas, anytime soon?
Possibly. It's possible I might have to go back to the U.S., maybe end of winter or spring, so it's going to be maybe February or March 2021.
Oh, damn.
Yeah,
so you're going to have to go through that whole process again, unless if cases drop or even a vaccine.
Well, I don't, when it comes to, I guess, people coming in and out of the country, in the case of Korea, I don't think they're going to drop it for a while.
Sure.
I mean, that's my own personal subjective opinion about this, is that I think that this 2-week quarantine, as soon as you land, I think it's going to be in place for at least another half year, if not the rest, all of 2021.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the culture of traveling has just changed drastically.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a turning point for global society.
For more on overseas travel during the pandemic, check with Korean Immigration, your consulate or embassy, or the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency. That's KDCA. The hotline number is 1339, or you can visit www.cdc.go.kr. Safe travels.